Dedan Kimathi, Wakiori, definition of a leader. 4. Make good TV. Dedan Kimathi, Wakiori, whose birth date is unknown but lived to 1957, was the head of the Mau Mau, a militant group that waged a guerrilla war against the British colonial government in Kenya, which stemmed overall from African discontent over lack of influence on politics and over loss of their land to the whites. This was a nationalist guerrilla struggle. Kenya's independence from British rule is largely attributed to the spirited and committed fight of the Mau Mau, led by the stewardship of Dedan Kimathi. The Mau Mau began in 1947, taking its name from the range of mountains bordering the Rift Valley as its western side, northeast of Lake Naivasha, as the Land and Freedom Army, a militant Kikuyu army spreading its agenda secretly among Africans to reclaim their land that had been stripped from them by the colonialists. It was fought largely in Kikuyu areas because of mountain hiding places there. Used to be Aberdare Mountains, now called Inyadarua Mountains. The movement, though heavily Kikuyu, enjoyed nationwide support as it forced the colonialists to pay attention to Kenyan demands. Its initial membership was predominantly Kikuyu, though with time other Kenyans joined. And as its influence and membership widened, it became a major threat to the colonialists. Among the strategies the Mau Mau movement employed included the assassination of the British settlers, along with their African collaborators. As a cash-strapped grassroots army, they got their resources either through coercion or theft. They would urge their people, for example, to contribute resources whether or not they sympathized with the Mau Mau cause. The Mau Mau officially rose from its underground state in 1952, boosting nearly 30,000 Kenyans. Kimathi and the Mau Mau were opposed with fierce brutality by British troops who targeted the families of the men and women who staffed the Mau Mau ranks. The British also carpeted bombed neighborhoods that the suspected were in support of the Mau Mau. The idea was to demoralize the fighters by murdering their families. However, this brutality only set flame to the growing fire. Kimathi was a man who understood the importance of having a unified front against the opponent, and that the largest and most pervasive enemy of unification is internal dissension. For this reason, Kimathi and the Mau Mau instituted a rigorous campaign of house cleaning, targeted Askani supporters, sympathizers, and officers, enforced British law in Kenya, called Home Guards. These men and women would inform British about revolutionary activities in the community, were paid well by the British to do so. By targeting the people who collaborated with the British, the Mau Mau made a statement that they understood that dissension is the true enemy of their nationhood. The British colonial government declared a state of emergency. A host of Kenyan political leaders, including Mzee Jomo Kenyatta, were arrested on charges of being affiliated with the Mau Mau. Though the case against Kenyatta was very weak, he was nevertheless sentenced to 7 years imprisonment at Kapenguria and later released under house arrest in Ladwar, a desert area of northern Kenya. During the state of emergency that lasted until 1960, Kenyans were kept in heavily protected villages, a technique learned from the Germans during the Jewish Holocaust and later used by U.S. in the Vietnam War. Their movements were severely restricted, and Mau Mau believers were put through re-education to return them to civilization. Curfews were declared at night, and any Kenyan found breaking the curfew ran the risk of getting shot, as many were. The Mau Mau was targeted by the colonialists in 1956, having helped significantly in Kenya's struggle for independence. Since without the Mau Mau movement under the leadership of Kimathi and the attention it brought to Kenyan politics, Kenya's independence might have never been possible. On February 18, 1957, Kimathi was executed by the colonialists at the notorious Kimathi maximum prison, where his remains are still believed to be buried in an unmarked grave. Kimathi was a popular figure but avoided fame. He was excellent at what he did, but preferred payment and result rather than gold. He was an excellent speaker, yet knew his strength lied in field operations, and so that is where he stayed and made his impact. Kimathi was extremely skilled at his craft, yet sought to create others who he hoped would surpass his abilities, passion and drive to fight for the rights of his people. He did not conceal, hide, or require vast riches in exchange for his knowledge. He gave it willingly to those who sought to continue his work. Much about leadership can be gleaned from this hero of ours and applied to our struggles today. Much also can be learned about his oppressors and their actions and reactions to revolutionary movements so that casualties might be minimal.